Hey Golf Country fans! Today I'm going to rebuild my front brake calipers. Here's how they looked when I removed them from the car. That's 30 years of rust and dirt. I started the cleaning process off camera by removing the Teflon guides and rubber dust boots. Then I de-rusted the exterior surfaces using my wire wheel and media blaster. In order to clean the insides of each caliper, I needed to remove the piston, dust boot, and seal. Prior to media blasting, I had inserted a rubber plug in the brake hose hole. I took this out, but left the bleeder screw in. I expected the piston would pop out forcefully, so I cushioned it with a leather glove, then shot compressed air into the brake hose hole. The piston lifted right out. Next came the dust boot. This will get replaced. And finally the seal. This too will get replaced. I followed the same process for the second caliper. I wanted to make sure I ordered the correct replacement parts, so I measured the piston diameter. Then I ordered 2 piston kits. With the caliper bodies completely disassembled, I subjected them to overnight electrolysis to clean the interior surfaces. I cleaned out the 4 mounting holes with a small drum sander attachment on my Dremel tool. I switched over to a wire wheel to clean the grooves for the piston seals. So this caliper has been cleaned, as you can see, de-rusted. This one's been painted. And I'll show you how I went about painting it. The first thing I did is I found an old scrap piece of hose that was the right diameter to fit snugly in the hole. So I just pushed it in and took a utility knife and cut it off. So that's what I'm using for plugs on that side, which I think I'll just reuse on this one. And then for the piston, I actually just took one of the old pistons and I trimmed down the rubber ring that sits on the top of it to just keep that innermost part. And that way it just sat right up against the lip of where I wanted to keep the paint. So I'm just going to transfer that over here, paint it like that. See how easily these guys pop out. And just a piece of hose. Haha, that was easy. Then for these fittings, I just popped a rubber plug in there, which I can actually pick out one of these drum brake springs. Just a little vinyl cap. I don't remember where I got them. keeps the paint out. Before painting parts, I like to clean them with a wax and grease remover. Now for paint, I'm using engine enamel, VHT engine enamel, and that's for a couple of reasons. I'm trying to use up what I have lying around, and I did some Google searching last night, and it seemed as if you can get away with using the engine paint for brake parts, so I'm just going to give it an experiment. I won't be hitting these brakes real hard. It's not like I'll be racing the car or off-roading it. This wax and grease remover, of course, takes off any contaminants from my hands from working with the part prior to painting. Look at all that. Okay. And a little air. My new parts arrived. Time for reassembly. The pistons had some sort of residue on them, so I wiped them down with acetone. The inside of the piston didn't clean up as well, but it's the outside of the piston that really matters. I gave the second piston the same treatment. I bought a silicone-based brake parts lubricant that is compatible with the .5 silicone brake fluid that I'll be using. I first applied lubricant to the cylinder and piston, then checked their fit.
Whoa.
Next, I lubricated the seal and inserted it into its groove, just inside the cylinder. Finally, I lubed up the dust boot and slipped it over the piston. The trick is to position the dust boot near the back of the piston with its outer lip extending away from it. Use the peephole on the top of the caliper body to see whether the dust boot is properly seated there. It can be a little tricky, but I found that twisting the dust boot into position works well. Once the dust boot is seated all the way around, the piston can be pushed into place. Align the piston with the cylinder and apply even pressure to overcome the resistance of the seal. Wipe off excess lubricant and verify that the dust boot is seated. I followed the same process for the second caliper. Next, I reinstalled the bleeder screws and their rubber dust caps. The only parts left to install were the Teflon guides and rubber dust boots that surround the mounting bolts and sleeves. I bought 2 new sets. I lubricated the rubber dust boots to help them slide in easier. The Teflon rectangles have to be rolled into a tube shape before inserting them inside the rubber dust boots. Make sure the 2 raised edges end up on either end of the tube. The Teflon likes to fold over and crease, so I found that wrapping it around a screwdriver helped a lot. After inserting each Teflon guide, I gently expanded its inner diameter using a tapered punch. I followed the same procedure with the second caliper. ready to go back on the car. Thanks for watching.